Good morning. Okay, seriously. Good morning. Here we go. Thank you. I am Norman Allen, your intern minister, and it is a beautiful, rainy, cozy day here at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, a liberal religious community where love works. Our mission is to explore the eternal, to nurture community, and to build a more just world. Together, we dare to practice and embody the beloved community of all souls.
Good morning. I'm Abhi Janamanchi, one of the ministers who serves this religious community. It's wonderful to see you all this morning, and whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you're from, and wherever you are on life's journey, whatever your beliefs, life circumstance, gender identity, or immigration status, you are welcome here.
We offer a special welcome to those joining our service online, whether in the moment or catching up with us later. We're glad to have you with us. If you are new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. Please raise your hand if you are comfortable doing so, and keep it raised for a moment so our ushers can find you if we have any visitors today. Thank you for choosing to worship with us. All are invited to stay after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. If visitors choose to use a yellow mug, our members and friends will be sure to greet you.
Also, I'd like to say that today we are welcoming new members who will be recognized and introduced to the congregation during the service. And following the service, there will be a reception where you get a chance to meet some of our new members, which will be in the library towards the back of the sanctuary to my left. We hope to see you there for the reception. And I'd like to draw your attention at this time to the printed announcement sheet in your order of celebration. Please take a moment to pull it out and look at the many wonderful things that are happening this week as well as in upcoming weeks. And while you do so, also, if you have smartphones, iPhones, Android, Samsung, whatever they are, now is the time to put them on worship mode. Thank you. And our lay pastoral visitors work closely with the ministers to support the pastoral ministry of our congregation. If you have a pastoral need or concern, our pastoral visitor for today, Ann Meyer, will be present at the Joys and Sorrows Candles table following the service. Thank you, Ann. And tonight at 7 p.m. for our evening forum, we're delighted to welcome our colleague, the Reverend Dr. Deborah Hafner, who will be speaking on the theme of sexuality, education, and justice as we as a nation try to move past a Me Too moment to create a movement, and wondering about what it means to build this movement. The work of Dr. Hafner is a guiding light that leads the way. The trainings that she has created for clergy around misconduct are an industry standard, and also her work in the field of gender justice and education is exemplary. All of what her work is grounded in the belief that sexuality education is a religious and moral issue. So we hope to see many of you there tonight.
I want to remind you about an invitation you may have received in the mail to a family-friendly, all Cedar Lane event that you won't want to miss. Saturday, March 3rd, we'll gather at the Women's Club of Chevy Chase, the very place where this church has its origins. We'll be there for the luncheon kickoff of the combined annual and capital campaign. There will be entertainment and activity for all ages. The event is a very special occasion to share in building the vision of Cedar Lane's future. There will be no solicitation of funds at the event, but there will be fun, community building, inspiration, and a free lunch. Don't hesitate to visit. There is such a thing as a free lunch. Don't hesitate to visit the Capital Campaign table in the lounge after service today if you have any questions.
Right.
Go for it.
Okay. So you will be treated to a very special program of interpretive dance that Norman is not only composing around the theme of building the vision, right?
Yeah, the blushing is already happening. I want to point out, this is a rumor that has been spreading, and while I hesitate to say these two words in this community, it is definitely fake news. This is not something that's going to happen.
Except, you see, as a supervisor, I can require him to make that real news.
I guess I have to leave it there.
Yep, for
Perhaps
now.
there will be solicitation of funds, and if we reach a certain amount of money, there will be interpretive dance. How's that sound?
That sounds like a plan. All right. Moving on to more serious
Quickly,
things.
please.
The Unitarian Universalist Association's Common Read, which is a process we go through every year reading a book, is going to be a very important and groundbreaking book called Daring Democracy by Dr. Francis Moore Lepay, who is a world-renowned researcher and writer of food and democracy policy. These discussions will be guided and led by Kathleen Reedy, one of our members, and we hope you'll be able to join in these conversations as we prepare to receive Francis Moore Lepay, who's going to be our Kiplinger lecturer on Sunday, March 11th at 2 p.m. So if you have questions about the book and what this process is, please see Kathleen after the service in the lounge. Thank you, Kathleen.
Please also note that the Poor People's Campaign mass meeting has been rescheduled for Monday, February 19th at 7 p.m., and that will be at the Shiloh Baptist Church in Washington, D.C.
And the Refugee Support Ministry team is collecting toiletries and household cleaning supplies for 35 local refugee families. And please check out their display at their table in the lounge following the service, and choose items to contribute or donate cash for us to be able to purchase those items.
And finally, in our current political climate, it is increasingly likely that we will be called to become a physical sanctuary to an immigrant in need. When that day comes, we'll need volunteers ready to offer a wide range of assistance. If you're interested in participating, please visit the Immigrant Justice Ministry team table in the lounge after the service today. And now, one of my favorite parts of the service, please greet your neighbors as we start the morning. Thank you.
Let us center ourselves, inviting our mind, body, and spirit into this space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the Holy, in which we live, move, and have our being. Let us gather our thoughts with these centering words from the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows and our joys, our passion and our compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength, wisdom, and perseverance beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship.
As Ushacharya kindles our chalice, symbol of our shared faith, please rise in body and/or in spirit to share the chalice lighting words printed in your order of celebration. The chalice is lit in our hearts each time that we pray for vision, long for healing, forgive our enemies, comfort our neighbors, and prepare for justice's day. In its light, our hope and compassion are renewed, and the covenant of ties that bind each to all become clear. Now, by the sacred flame, the path before us is brightened. Love prepares our way. Harmony is in view. There is no east or west, no south or north. Only a world to breathe, and blessed with more light still.
Please remain as you are. To sing our opening hymn, we would be one, number 318 in your great hymn.
It is always a special day when we welcome new members, and also those who have been members for a long time get to recommit to what it means to be members, to be in covenant, to hold each other, and to create this special community over day after day into something more and more profound. The Reverend Dr. John Wolfe said it best when he stated that people choose to become members of Unitarian Universalist congregations because it is a place where children can learn that religions are for joy, comfort, and gratitude and love. It is a place where walls between peoples are torn down rather than built up. It is more concerned with human beings than dogma. It searches for the holy rather than dwelling upon the depraved. It calls no one a sinner, yet knows how deep the struggle in each person's heart is and how great the hunger for what is good. It calls us to worship what is truly worthy of our sacrifice. Wolf continues, there's only one reason for joining a UU church: to support it. We have many new members gathered here today and some who were also in the 9 a.m. service. Our new members will shortly come on to the chancel to be welcomed into covenant with this great congregation. And I ask that if there is any among you who has not yet become a member, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and also come forward to sign the book today and enter into membership and covenant with this fine congregation.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Sara Davidson. I'm your Director of Communications and Membership Engagement.
Woo!
I would like to welcome a couple of our members from the membership ministry team to come up to the stage. Ginger and Michael, okay. New members, please, new members, as I call your name, please join us on the stage. Scott Brown and Jeffrey Johnston, Sarah and Brian Cuneo, and one of their twins, Jonah, Chelsea's an RE, and Karen Keel. New members, please read the affirmation printed in your order of service. There's copies behind you if you need them. And in just a moment. As new members, yeah.
Good morning. I'm Gail Riley, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I would like to welcome you in membership in our beloved community here at Cedar Lane, and ask the congregation to join me in reading the congregational affirmation to welcome our new members. We bid you welcome as you come with anticipation and joy. We hope that you will find here room to grow and flourish in mind, body, and spirit. We accept you into our community as companions in the spiritual journey. We commit to rejoice with you in times of happiness, to grieve with you in times of sorrow, and to share with you all the blessings of our free faith.
And I invite us to share these words from our Unitarian forebear, Theodore Parker. Be ours a religion, please join me. Sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. Let's extend a warm Cedar Lane welcome to our leaders.
Each time we gather for worship, we gather not for our needs alone, but to bear witness to the joys, sorrows, and milestones that unfold in all of our lives, and to serve as companions to one another throughout these profound journeys of faith. We gather to build the beloved community where all souls are welcome and lives are rendered whole and reconciled. Our hearts are with those for whom parenting is a primary spiritual practice. We hold in our circle of caring those who live with grief or chronic pain, with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, those who have suffered abuse, and those who care for family members in ill health. We hold in our hearts and prayers Marie Powell, who has returned home from rehab. Cards and calls are welcome. And Helen Pikacek, who is recovering from knee surgery. She would love cards and calls. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others in times of calamity and loss. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all that lives unspoken in our heart, be held in the embrace of prayer and silence.
Let us move more deeply into this prayerful space. Let us begin to enter that place of contemplation and meditation. I invite you to focus your eyes on the wall behind me, or maybe the flickering chalice flame, or if you feel called, allow your eyes to close naturally. Let us breathe into this space, shifting in our seats, maybe lifting our shoulders and then rolling them back and letting them drop. Our shoulders throughout the week sometimes can go higher and higher and higher with our stress levels, but when we choose to breathe and release them, we can begin to let go. With our next collective breath, let us imagine that we are wiggling our toes, and from the soles of our feet, our roots begin to grow down through layers of concrete, soil, and water and rock, grounding us in the very earth that sustains us, the very earth that our ancestors trod upon, the very earth that has nourished our line since the dawn of time. And just imagine that that which is holding us begins to move up through those roots, through layers of soil and water and rock, through the concrete floor to our feet and ankles and legs, holding us so that we can just let go. Just let go and settle into the space. Let it move through our hips and remind us that we are seated comfortably and safely in the presence of others who bear witness to our lives, holding us from in front of us, behind us, and the sides, as we also hold them. With the next breath, let us relax our torsos, maybe even feeling our spine straighten a bit more as that wonderful earth stable energy moves up our spine to our head and neck, shoulders, arms, and hands, moving in front of us, behind us, to the left, to the right, and all around us. And as we find ourselves surrounded in this space by this groundedness, let us also look within to a grounded space, that still small voice, that silence within. And if our minds become distracted, we can return to the silence with a breath, noticing how it moves in through our nostrils and out through our mouths. And as we hold the silence together, know that if you are mourning the loss of a loved one, you may rise in body or spirit to honor that loss or the anniversary of that loss. Let us hold the silence together. Every day in every way, may you experience more and more moments of deep and profound silence within your spirits. And the more you notice those moments, may you notice still more of those silent, peaceful moments. And in that silence and peace, may you live your lives well, forever feeling held by this great community and that mysterious something other. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be.
In 1869, Keshub Chunderson, a leading member of the Brahmo Samaj, a Unitarian Hindu reform movement with close ties to American Unitarianism, wrote this poem on the church universal to describe his vision of liberal religion. It's a poem that is read at the Community Church of New York at the start of Sunday services every week. Unto the church universal, which is the repository of all ancient wisdom and the school of all modern thought, which recognizes in all prophets a harmony, in all scriptures a unity, and through all dispensations a continuity, which abjures all that separates and divides and always magnifies humanity and peace, which seeks truth in freedom, justice in love, and individual discipline in social duty, and which shall make of all persons, sects, classes, nations, and races one beloved community. Unto this church and all its members, known and unknown throughout the world, we pledge the allegiance of our hands and our hearts.
peace, I offer you love, I offer you friendship. I see your beauty, I hear your need, I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute the source in you. I offer you peace, I offer you love, I offer you friendship. I see your beauty, I hear your need, I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute the source in you.
Thank you, members of the choir, Henry and Jasmine, for that beautiful anthem by Carl Jenkins. Good morning, or should I say good evening, since it's 9 o'clock in India on Sunday evening. I was sharing with the 9 a.m. service that I'm still functional today, and about 2/3 of me is present this morning. The 1/3 is either still back in India or somewhere stuck in the Atlantic somewhere. But it's good to be back. It's good to see you all. I have missed being here, though I have not really missed being here. But it is truly a blessing to have been back home, not just visiting with family and relatives who I had not seen in 3.5 years, but also spend time with our Unitarian siblings, who, by the way, send their greetings of love and affection to you, and especially to our Minister Emeritus, the Reverend Ken McLean, who, after he left Cedar Lane, served as the Director of International Relations at the UUA, and part of his work was to nurture these ties with our Unitarian siblings, not just in India, but in other parts of the world, in Europe, in the Philippines, and in Africa. So, Ken, this is my official warm greetings from our Khasi brothers and sisters, our Brahmos, and the Chennai Unitarians. So, this morning's reflection is focusing on the connections between these groups in India and Unitarian Universalists, and the connections between India, the thought of India and the United States, are quite significant. For example, Hindu and Buddhist teachings greatly influenced the transcendentalism of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, and the ideology of the Free Religious Association. Likewise, the ideas of civil disobedience that Thoreau promoted in his essay deeply impacted Mahatma Gandhi's ideas of satyagraha, which led to India's freedom struggle. And Mahatma Gandhi's ideas of satyagraha and nonviolent civil disobedience impacted the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement here in the United States. And the writings of William Ellery Channing, Theodore Parker impacted the thinking and beliefs of many Brahmos and Khasi Unitarians in the 19th century. So the story in its details provides fascinating insights into the characters, organizations, theology, and faith of Indian Unitarians as well as their American and British counterparts. But it is a different story when compared to other Christian missionary efforts which have traditionally tried to colonize and dominate another culture or faith. It is a story of developing interrelationships between people on 3 different continents who unexpectedly discovered each other, that they had much in common and much worth sharing despite significant cultural and religious differences. It is a story of 3 distinctive Unitarian groups that emphasized a message of unity in diversity, religious freedom, and an unshakable belief in a single formless God who loved all people. It's the story of 3 Unitarian groups that have persevered despite incredible hostility, persecution, and oppression to this day. But to understand these connections, we have to begin by looking first into the origin and development of the Madras Unitarian Christian Church in what is Chennai, in the state of Tamil Nadu in southeastern India. Now, the first Indian identifying as a Unitarian Christian was Thiruvengadam Mudaliyar, aka William Roberts, who founded the Unitarian Church in Chennai in the year 1795. Now, Roberts, as a young man, was sold as a slave to a ship officer, but was later freed by the ship's captain, who happened to be Unitarian. Now, Roberts had converted to being an Anglican at that point, but influenced by his captain's Unitarian ideas and being exposed to the writings of British Unitarians like Joseph Priestley, the discoverer of oxygen, and Theophilus Lindsay, he became a steadfast Unitarian in his beliefs. He wrote, and I quote, "I was astonished to see that my doubts were not without foundation, and that the doctrine of the Trinity at which I stumbled was not the doctrine of the Bible." Thereafter, Roberts considered himself a Unitarian, one of those, he said, who owned the crucified man, Jesus of Nazareth, to be their only spiritual head under God the Creator. The first gathering of Unitarian Christians in Chennai was made up of 10 families. In 1813, the group opened a small chapel. Roberts and his friend Miguel Annati led the services. Roberts committed his sons, Theophilus, Joseph, and William Jr., to the Unitarian cause. He died in 1838. The Chennai Unitarian Christian Church remains in existence to this day. I had the privilege of worshiping with them on my recent trip and was inspired to witness an energizing and spirit-filled contemporary worship experience that I've ever witnessed in my 20 years of ministry, which was led by the great-great-great-grandson of William Roberts, the Reverend Harrison Kingsley. Harrison, as is the custom there, invited me to preach right in the middle of the service, which I had not planned on. He just said, "Say a few words." So I did, except I spoke in Tamil, which is one of the languages I studied and learned to read, speak, and write as a child. So imagine the surprise of the young people in that congregation to suddenly see me, this foreign returned Unitarian Universalist minister, launch into a volley of colloquial Tamil that they had not expected to come out of my mouth. It was a wonderful moment to see them a little bit freaked out. But the congregation is filled with the Unitarian spirit. It has a membership of around 300 adults and children and continues to provide vital ministry to both the gathered community and the local community in Purswakam, Chennai, of mostly working class and poor people, as well as in a neighboring village where they support a sewing school for women and a night school for adults and children, an important aspect of their outreach ministry. There are two other strands of Unitarianism in India which also deserve a mention. One is the Brahma Samaj, or the Society of the Worshippers of One God, the Unitarian Hindu group that my family and I have been members of for 3 generations. The Brahma Samaj was founded in 1828 by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, an eminent social reformer, theologian, and public intellectual in the eastern state of Bengal. It aimed at a reform of Hinduism and preserving its higher elements of truth, spirituality, and essential religion. The Brahma Samaj took its stand distinctly on theism, ethical theism, the worship of one God, a God of justice, truth, and love. Ram Mohan Roy was a fascinating character, a person who was well-read and well-versed in the world's religious scriptures, having studied the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Quran, and the Bible in their original languages, a polyglot who could speak, read, and write 7 different languages. Now, Roy began his life after a successful career as a social reformer, taking on the pernicious custom of sati, the custom that was prevalent in eastern and northern parts of India, which involved the burning of widows on the funeral pyres of their dead husbands. Roy, who witnessed this awful custom being practiced towards his sister-in-law, decided to take it upon himself to get it banned. And in the process, he researched the Hindu scriptures and found no reason for this custom to exist except that it provided for economic benefits to the families of the dead husbands. So Roy made his case, a moral case, which had 3 points. 1, he said, if you are saying that women are somehow inferior in intellect and character to men, you need to provide them with educational opportunities in order to ascertain that before you make that judgment. That was number 1. The second reason, he said, was if women are supposed to be weak, the fact of the matter is it is the wife who sits willingly on the funeral pyre of her dead husband, not the husband when his wife passes. And third, he said, if indeed sati is religiously adjudicated, it does not compute with the Hindu belief of the divine spark being present in all, not just men. And for us to practice something that goes against the grain of a central core teaching of Hinduism is not only religiously wrong, but morally wrong as well. His argument carried so much weight that it was an act of British Parliament in the year 1825 that led to the banning of this pernicious custom. But Roy did not stop there. He proceeded to engage in other kinds of social and religious reform, which brought him both great attention and controversy. The Baptist community in Kolkata reached out to him through 2 missionaries, William Yates and William Adam, who invited him into collaborating with them on a project to translate the New Testament into Bengali. The translation project was going swimmingly well until they got to the Gospel of John, where Roy had to take a Unitarian position regarding some of the texts in the Gospel of John, which William Yates strongly disagreed and proceeded to leave the project, but William Adam continued with Ram Mohan Roy, and in the process was deeply impressed with Roy's Unitarian ideas and publicly announced his conversion to Unitarianism. which led to a huge controversy in the Baptist missionary community in Kolkata, that this episode came to be called the case of the second fallen Adam. But Adam and Roy went on to establish the first Unitarian society in Kolkata in 1821, to which Adam became their first minister. And when Roy was criticized by his fellow Hindus for converting to Unitarianism and frequenting a Unitarian place of worship, he responded, "Because the prayers read, worship offered, and sermons preached in a Unitarian place of worship remind me of the infinitely wise ruler of this infinite universe. Because Unitarians reject polytheism and idolatry under every sophisticated modification. Because Unitarians believe, profess, and inculcate the doctrine of divine unity, which I find firmly maintained both by the Christian scriptures and the Hindu Vedas." This he wrote in the 1820s. Roy concluded that no human being could truly understand the nature of ultimate reality. At the same time, he saw the true heart of Hindu thought in the idea that nothing is absent from God. The universe, he believed, is acted upon by God in the same manner as a human body is by soul. Much of his writing fueled the transcendentalist vision within American Unitarianism and helped Unitarian Universalism's metamorphosis beyond its Christian roots and identity. Now, after Roy's untimely death on a visit to England in 1833, the leadership of the Brahma Samaj was taken up by Devendranath Tagore, father of the renowned poet Rabindranath Tagore, whose poetry was set to music and sung by the choir earlier in the service. Now, Devendranath Tagore did not share Roy's cosmopolitan vision and was more conservative in his approach. But under his guidance and leadership, the Samaj became an active Hindu missionary organization. As a result, differences developed between the older and younger members of the Brahma Samaj. And Keshub Chandra Sen, a young, charismatic leader, moved the Brahma Samaj in a more liberal direction. He rejected the caste system and child marriage and promoted women's education and widow remarriage. And drawing upon world scriptures, he gave the Brahma Samaj a universal character. However, by 1865, differences between him and other members of the Brahma Samaj became sufficiently acute that he split off from the parent group and formed the Brahma Samaj of India. Towards the end of his short life, he lived only to be 46. Sen became more mystically oriented, following his own sense of revelation. And so a third branch of Brahmos, the Sadharan Brahma Samaj, was formed in 1878 by those who took a more rational and humanistic position. The Sadharan Brahma Samaj is the only existing Samaj to this day. Today, the Brahma Samaj is a very small minority of around 10,000 members in a country of over 1 billion people, with mostly hereditary membership. Though unable to purge the Hindu tradition of what it saw as idolatry and superstition, it did provide a rational critique of religious thought and practice and a commitment to social justice that contributed to the establishment of a secular, democratic Indian society. Now, there was continuous American Unitarian presence in the person of the Reverend Charles Dahl in Calcutta from 1855 to 1886. Dahl was involved in establishing schools and education reform programs, and he controversially joined the Brahma Samaj itself as a member. As the Reverend Dr. Spencer Levin writes, Dahl's work did much to promote interfaith dialogue and to prepare the way for modern India. And now, almost 60 years later, in 1887, a third strand of Unitarianism emerged in the Khasi and Jaintia hills of Meghalaya, which means the abode of the clouds in northeastern India. Now, Meghalaya is about the size of Massachusetts. The eastern two-thirds of this highland state is the homeland of the Khasi, Jaintia, and Karbi people, who have their own language and culture. Their society is matrilineal, not to be confused with matriarchal, and lineage and inheritance in a matrilineal society follow the mother's line. Women own all the property, but the property is managed in some cases by maternal uncles. They have their own language, Khasi, which was unwritten until the arrival of Christian missionaries in the early 1800s. In fact, in 1840, Welsh Calvinist missionaries swept into the region and proceeded to convert vast numbers of people from their indigenous faith to Christianity, replacing their fear of demons with the fear of inherent sinfulness. In addition, they created a written language using Roman letters, translated the Bible into Khasi, and established schools. The founder of Khasi Unitarianism, Babu Hajom Kishore Singh, was born in 1865 into a family that followed the traditional Khasi religion. He and his brother were sent to a missionary school where he was converted to Christianity at the age of 15. One Khasi Unitarian scholar, Dr. Nongbri, emphasizes today, however, even from his childhood, Hajom Kishore showed interest in spiritual and religious matters. His questioning spirit and wide reading soon led him to question aspects of the Calvinistic faith. Slowly, his conviction grew that there was a Christianity more akin to the religion of Jesus, rather than a religion about Jesus, than the one in which he had received formal instruction. Soon, his disenchantment with the Calvinist faith led him to break away from that order. End of quote. Having broken away, Hajom Kishore Singh, working on his own, drawing from both traditional and missionary concepts, envisioned and founded a new religion, Ka Niyam Mane We Ble, or a religion of one God. Eventually, he met with a leader of the Brahma Samaj who introduced him to the Reverend Charles Dahl in Kolkata. And when Singh wrote to Reverend Dahl responded by sending him a large quantity of Unitarian literature, mostly sermons by Channing, Parker, and Emerson, which then persuaded Singh that his religion of one God was so much like the Unitarianism that Reverend Dahl was preaching that he adopted the name Unitarian for his indigenous religion. But Khasi Unitarianism flourishes to this day in the context of a culture that is very different from anything we know here. According to the Reverend Help Me Mormon, the concept of God worshipped by the Khasi Unitarians is very different from the Christian version. The God of the Khasis, Reverend Mormon writes, is formless and universal. Hajom Kishore Singh, he says, went a step further by preaching the motherhood and fatherhood concept of God. Unitarians, therefore, worship the original Khasi idea of God, a universal God, a divine power, and a benevolent benefactor. So the central theology of Khasi Unitarianism is that each person must behave in a just manner, observing and obeying God's commands. The commands passed orally from generation to generation are, number one, earned by one's own labor, righteousness. To live a righteous life, a person must not only speak the truth and act justly, but should be honest in all thoughts and wishes as well. Number two, know God, not N-O, K-N-O-W, know God, know humanity. Traditional Khasis teach that a person can only serve God when that person serves other persons. And serving other persons means doing one's duty to them, which is to be good, kind, and helpful to one and all, not to cause harm or injury to anyone for one's own profit or pleasure. And number three, respect relations, maternal and paternal. This law requires Khasis to follow a code of behavior in all personal, family, clan, and tribal matters. It is a complex, finely wrought set of rules that specify what different people can and cannot do within an interlocking system of family and clan relationships. Now, although Khasi Unitarians have the Bible and quote from it, Those quotes are intended as proof text to support traditional Khasi ideas and beliefs, not biblical ideas. Their concept of God and of religion began and remains, for the most part, quite independent of the Bible. So Singh's religion of one God provided something new to the Khasis. Churches, liturgy and an order of service, Sunday services, group worship, even some ministers aligning it in practice with the dominant colonial and Christian power structure. In doing that, Hajam Kishore Singh omitted some traditional beliefs and practices, such as the reading of omens and animal sacrifice. He also provided strong leadership without ever being ordained, setting a precedent for a strongly lay-led rather than minister-led church. After founding his new religion, he devoted the rest of his life until his death in 1923 to seeking converts, preaching, starting churches, and nurturing what he had begun. Hajam Kishore Singh defined Khasi Unitarianism as a way of life, and he defined salvation as escape from the inner bondage of sin and superstition. He encouraged tolerance and friendship across differences of beliefs and cultures. His efforts were met with ridicule, hostility, and persecution by the Christian missionaries of his day. The Calvinists tried to burn down his church, eventually succeeding in 1918. Despite all this, Hajam Kishore Singh stood firm in his convictions and persevered with patience, courage, and faith. His passion and perseverance paved the way for a religion that continues to this day. Now, there are well over 1 million Khasi tribal people today. More than half are Christian. Just around 10,000, a small minority, are Unitarian. Many of them are highly educated. They teach in colleges, work for the government, use computers and cell phones, live in modern houses with electricity and high-speed internet, keep lovely gardens, drive cars, and so on. Even more of them are in country villages, subsistence farmers for the most part, less educated, living in bamboo huts and houses. Today, there are more than 40 Unitarian churches in Meghalaya, with 3 just being over the border in the eastern state of Assam. Almost all these churches maintain schools, all but 3 pre-primary for all the children in the village, that being their principal outreach in the community. They also run an orphanage and a medical clinic in a rural area and are actively involved in supporting microcredit initiatives that support farmers and small businesses in villages and small towns. Since the 19th century, the Chennai Unitarians, the Brahmos, and the Khasi Unitarians have maintained close relationships with Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists around the world, first through the International Association for Religious Freedom, the IARF, and then through ongoing connections with the Unitarian Universalist Association and the British Unitarians, and more recently through the UU Partner Church Council and the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists, the ICUU, which is meeting in Nepal as we speak. There, my friends. Whew. Too briefly stated is what I understand to be the essence of Unitarianism in India. But in all of this, I fear I have not presented the real flesh and blood humanity of the people that people like Ken and I have been so blessed to know, to be a part of, and to love for almost 3 decades. Now, their lives are very, very different from what we experience here, just as our cultures and opportunities are very different. But for all of them, across the board, the Unitarian identity is absolutely central and vital to their lives. All that they say, share, and do relates to their key cultural religious themes of knowing, and experiencing God in their daily lives and living out their Unitarian faith within a covenanting community. Now, this was strongly evident, vibrantly so, at the Unitarian Union's annual conference, which I was privileged to participate as a speaker in one of their 3 worship services last Sunday on the theme, Love Her Communion Cup, which is a line taken from Samuel Longfellow's poem, The Church Universal, which he wrote 20 years after Keshub Sen in 1889. This I shared with a gathered community of 3,000 people, mostly people from villages who had traveled far and wide, having saved up money all year to make this annual pilgrimage to their Unitarian assembly, to witness to and promote their Unitarian faith. Just looking across this gathered assembly of people of all ages, children and youth leading worship through their music and their readings, was an incredibly inspiring experience, listening to prayers being prayed, not just for the health and well-being of the gathered people, but the world as a whole, and also to young people who were appearing for their final exams, who were brought forward together and prayed to and with by their leadership through a powerful ritual of candle lighting, was an incredibly moving experience that I cherish and will cherish for years to come. Of course, I also got to preach to my heart's content, because in the Khasi Unitarian tradition, preaching for 20 minutes is considered to be an insult. Seriously, I was told, because I went ahead and wrote up something for 20 minutes, and then my friend Derek Pariat, who's the president of the Unitarian Union, said, "How long are you preaching, Abhi?" And I said, 20 minutes. And he said, "Can you go a little longer?" Of course. So for all the times I have been castigated by my beloved folks, I really got to go all out. I really hope you get to go. I do. And you as well. As the world continues to shrink, and as we live in these strange and stranger times, not just here but around the world, where fear is rising, the fear of the other is on the increase, I hope that all of us will be open to new understandings that transcend the particulars and parochialisms of our own Unitarian Universalist faith that we sometimes cling on to a little too tightly, while we attempt to live the answers to the very basic questions that our faith asks of us. Who are we? Whose are we? What does it really mean to love thy neighbor, especially those that are completely different from us? And how shall we treat one another? Now, our Unitarian siblings in India have always responded to these questions with understanding, love, and radical hospitality, something that I was witness to and the recipient of on my trip. I say to us, may we learn by following their example and find the wisdom and inspiration to do just that. So may it be. Or as they say in Meghalaya, Tunangroy, keep on progressing. Amen. And now I invite our ushers who have been waiting so patiently for me to finish, which, by the way, I did go for almost 30 minutes, so thank you for your indulgence. To give and receive an offering to sustain the mission and ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. The offering will be given and gratefully received. I'm sweating. I did.
This is my prayer to thee, my Lord. Strike, strike at the root of penury. In my heart, give me the strength lightly to hear my joys and my sorrows. Give me the strength to make my love fruitful in service. Give me the strength never to disown the poor, open my knees before insolent might. Give me the strength to raise my mind high, high above daily trifles. And give me the strength to surrender my strength to thy will with love.
For the gifts which we have received, may we be grateful. May we be committed to using those gifts to share with the world, to increase love and justice, to expand beloved community, and to be grateful and glad for every blessing that comes our way. Please rise in body and/or in spirit to sing together hymn number 114, not 118, 114. Forward through the ages in the gray hymnal.
love this version to the original. Bless Frederick Lucian Hosmer for writing this and making this an anthem for our Unitarian Universalist faith. We close our time together with these words by Babu Hajun Kishore Singh. May the world be filled with the holiness of God. May our hearts be filled with divine love and compassion. May our strivings for justice, equity, and peace in the world embody God's love and peace. And may all that is good and true guide our way. The chalice flame is now extinguished until once again ignited by the strength of our communion. Go in peace, my friends, go making peace, living gently, loving fiercely, and bowing to the mystery. So may it be. Please be seated for the postlude.